Hey guys, Paul Elam here with another Regarding Men discussion where we hold men in high regard. And as always, I am joined by Janice Fiamengo of the Fiamengo Files and by Tom Golton of MenAreGood.com, both the
Very good.
website and the YouTube channel, which you should visit and support regularly. We're going to talk some today about Joe Biden and Tara Reade. And I'm going to start off by talking a little bit more about Joe Biden than I am about Tara Reade. First of all, the reason for that for me personally is that, sexual abuse, assault allegations are dime a dozen in politics, especially these days. They come from all sides. It is not a surprise that somebody on the left had this happen to them. The monster always comes back to bite the people that create it eventually. Just like some women get destroyed in family courts these days, there's going to be left-leaning politicians like Joe Biden, Al Franken, and others that really catch hell over these kind of allegations. So focusing too much, we're going to talk about Tara Reade, but I want to talk a little bit about Joe Biden first. And I think he's a particularly interesting case study. This is a guy who grew up in a physically and emotionally abusive family. He talked about this in the Senate while he was a senator, talking about his older sister beating them. And he said he had the bruises to prove it. And that in his family, there was a nuclear option, that if you ever lifted a finger to defend yourself against the physical assaults of the older sister, the family would take the nuclear option. Whatever that meant to Joe Biden, he was really certain his family would react in a very negative way if he ever laid a hand on his sister, even in self-defense. And so for me, I find it interesting that this is the kind of guy that grows up to co-sponsor the Violence Against Women Act. That he is out there, and we know in the world of psychology that people often find ways to live with their abuse by defending and rationalizing about their abusers, excusing them, almost identifying with them in many ways. And it seems so apparent to me that this is what Joe Biden has done politically. He grew up being abused. There was no option to defend himself. It was the understood rule in his family that you will take the beatings and you will keep your mouth shut. And exactly what he has done. And if you look at his speeches on college campuses, telling young men, you better take it and you better defend women no matter what's happening, or you're some sort of scumbag, and even encouraging men to rat each other out if they see things that seem inappropriate to them, almost like 1936 Berlin. That sort of, and to me, that is a recreation of Joe Biden's family. That's what he did with his political career. So I find Joe Biden, a very, very interesting psychological study, also a political study. And now here he is. We can argue whether, sometimes I don't think Joe can find his shoes, much less if he shouldn't be running for president of the United States. I simply cannot imagine this feeble-minded old man, which is what he is, running the free world, but he's what the Democrats served up. I mean, what can I say? They had 17 or 18 other options at the start of the primaries, and they elected Joe Biden. They have settled. He's going to represent them. Aside from his mental incapacity, though, we have the matter of Tara Reade, who has made allegations from 30 years ago, blah, blah, blah. You've heard all this before. There is a difference, though. If you look at what happened in the Kavanaugh case, Kavanaugh was skewered from the moment that the accusation was levied, and there was never any corroboration at all. Even the women, and I would encourage everybody to, we're going to link below to Janice's talk on Christine Blasey Ford, which went viral, and for good reason. It's a brilliant talk.
Wonderful.
Here we have someone whose own supposedly corroborating witnesses denied her claims.
Right.
She listed people as witnesses for her, and they said, I don't know what she's talking about.
Right, I don't remember that.
And the press and politicians were still rabid to go after Kavanaugh. And now we've got Biden, who I believe fully deserves due process in this case. And for that reason, I am siding with him. I believe that he deserves due process. He deserves a fair hearing. And if he doesn't get it, it's a miscarriage of justice. But here we have the hypocrisy on the left on full display. It couldn't be a more perfect case.
Yes.
Oh my God, Kavanaugh's a rapist. He shouldn't coach his daughter's softball team. He shouldn't be allowed around young people anymore, and he should be impeached from the Supreme Court. And Joe Biden gets accused of the same thing with more substantive backup, with more corroboration for the fact that at least an allegation was made 30 years ago. And the press is like this, and like this, and like this. Absolutely stunning. So anyways, I want to kick that off with that. I love this topic. And,
wow.
There's another
hopefully
thing.
this is the death of Me Too, but
It should be.
I would add on to that, Paul, that
be.
Kavanaugh, when he was accused, was a teenager. And Biden, when he was accused, had been in the Senate for 20 years. There's a huge difference between the two.
Yeah.
You know, one's a kid and one's an adult. A senator, for crying out loud. So there's a difference there too. But let's not forget something else about good old Biden. Biden did a lot of things in the Obama administration. One of the things he did was VAWA, but guess what else he did? He was involved directly with the Dear Colleague letter. You know, making sure that all these universities don't blame women. You know, they believe the woman no matter what. I mean, that was the theme he hit over and over and over again. You know, and all these accused males, well, you know, we have to take care of the woman first. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was just unbelievable what he would do and say. I mean, there's quotes of him talking about this where, you know, we can't put the accuser into a vulnerable state that would upset her. You know, we can't examine her. We can't ask her questions that would upset her. It's like, So Biden has been involved over and over again with things like this, where he does not allow the men due process. Period. Does not allow the men due process. And now guess what? Uh-oh, Joe.
Yeah, now we need due process.
And now he's got quotes where he goes, well, you know, first you have to believe the woman, but second, you need due process.
First you have to believe the woman, then you have to vet her. Those
literally. And Pelosi's even saying it now. She's saying, well, you know, of course we believe the women, but then there's also due process. All of these Democrats are coming out and saying, you know, another piece of this is that the Trump administration has withheld the Dear Colleague response. What do you call them? I forget what they call them. But they have this response to all that Dear Colleague stuff that's supposed to be coming out, but they've held it and held it and held it. Now is a perfect time to release it, because the Democrats, they would look stupid, you know, criticizing the Dear Colleague reformation, you know, when they're saying to Biden, well, he should have a say, he should have due process. So we'll see how that happens. But
it's amazing. I mean, it shows the incredible rank hypocrisy of Me Too advocates.
Yes.
I don't know how they can bear to get up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror saying such ridiculous things. It really, I mean, the Tara Reade allegation, all of these, you know, historical allegations are so difficult to deal with. What do you do with a 27-year-old allegation? How can the man possibly defend himself against that? But there is a significant difference between this one and Christine Blasey Ford's allegation against Brett Kavanaugh, and that, Tara Reade did tell people at the time.
Right.
And that is a very significant difference. It doesn't prove anything, but it certainly is a kind of evidence. And so it makes it a much more serious allegation. And but you know, Alyssa Milano, the face of Me Too, is suddenly now very concerned about due process. All these various politicians, and my attitude towards it is, yes, I 100% support due process, except I do make an exception for Joe Biden. With Joe Biden, I say he should go directly to jail. Straight to jail. A man who lives by Me Too to the extent that Joe Biden has does not deserve, he deserves what he has advocated
Amen.
for hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of men. This is a man who is responsible for men being kicked out of their homes as a result of an allegation by an angry divorcing wife. This is a man who is responsible for men losing contact with their children because of the feminist bias in the Violence Against Women Act and not being able to have a lawyer to help them to see their children. This is a man who's responsible for domestic abuse victims who happen to be male being arrested and being charged with violence themselves because of the feminist bigotry of the Violence Against Women Act. This is a man who didn't care about the thousands of young men at universities and colleges across the country who couldn't even find out what they were being accused of, and who were kicked out of school and had all of their career dreams ruined because of some trivial allegation, and they weren't even allowed to question their accuser or to have a lawyer present when they stood before the kangaroo court. I mean, this is a man who actually said, I wrote it down here, this is quoted in the Huffington Post September 2018. He's talking about Christine Blasey Ford's allegation against Brett Kavanaugh. This is what he says: for a woman to come forward in the glaring lights of focus nationally, you've got to start off with the presumption that at least the essence of what she's talking about is real. Whether or not she forgets facts, whether or not it's been made worse or better over time, nobody should fail to understand that this is like jumping into a cauldron. So now here he finds himself in the exact same position, but with a much more serious allegation. This is not a drunken tussle on a bed with a guy laughing hysterically and who then allows the woman to jump up and leave the room when it becomes apparent that she's not having fun. This is an actual sexual assault, so he should go straight to jail. He is also on record as saying that English jurisprudence, which he called white man's justice, needs to be completely reformed. He said that white man's justice is what has perpetuated violence against women and allowed it to go on for centuries, and it needs to be utterly torn down and rebuilt from a feminist perspective. So, wow. I mean, there is nobody in the United States today that I can think of as more deserving of this allegation and a very swift enactment of feminist justice. But of course, most of the feminists are now on his side. And in fact, many of the feminists who cried about Christine Blasey Ford's courage and, oh, wasn't it wonderful that she came forward, are now vying for a position as his vice presidential candidate. I mean, you can't make it up. It's unbelievable.
That is correct.
Oh, man. And, you know, you mentioned Alyssa Milano. I remember her sitting behind Kavanaugh all throughout the Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah.
Milano was in the audience, intentionally getting her face in there as though she were acting as the conscience of the nation. Here I am overseeing this. And now she comes out when you have at least an allegation with more substantiation of the allegation itself by far than Christine Blasey Ford has, and all of a sudden, all is okay. What a complete whore. But after hearing Janice's recommendation on Joe Biden going directly to jail, I think I'm going to have to suggest that Tom and I up our red pill dosage. We may have a ways to catch up, but I'm a stickler for that. I do believe in due process.
So do I.
That the removal of it, but I understand Janice's sentiments either.
Completely.
He is hoisting his own petard, and he goddamn deserves it.
I have been persuaded, Janice. I'm with you. The one person in the world that does not deserve it is Biden. Directly to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200 or $200 million.
He is perhaps the greatest advocate against due process, the biggest advocate that we've ever had in this country.
And against men.
Yes,
yeah.
in
You know,
particular.
I'll never forget when this was, I think, two times ago when they re-upped the VAWA was a group of us that were involved in trying to get men to be recognized in VAWA to be victims, right? So Biden took in a certain part of our group, and they'd have lunch together with him, and he would say, you're going to be a part of this, and we need to hear you out. And they'd tell him all the things they thought we needed to do. And then the time for the hearing came, and guess what? Not one of our group was allowed to speak. He shut everything down.
Yep.
When I heard that, I thought, daggone, we're in North Korea.
Yeah.
This is not America anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong with this picture.
No, he is a malicious liar.
He is.
There is something wrong with him in terms of his animus against men. And I think Paul's explanation for the psychological impetus behind all of that is really compelling, because it's not rational. He, on the one hand, I've seen him defend the Violence Against Women Act and saying that it's gender neutral and that men can be victims too, and that he's aware that some portion of men are also victims of domestic and sexualized violence. Then the manner in which the act has consistently been implemented over the decades proves that is not the case. And then his other actions, the vaunting you're getting what you deserve attitude that he has expressed so many times when he speaks to college men, for example, or when he makes the statement about white man's justice or about believing the woman when she comes forward. That just shows that he is quite willing to allow thousands and thousands of men to be unjustly accused and wrongfully convicted. And it's a terror. The thought of him becoming president of the United States and implementing yet more of these kinds of harshly misandric feminist policies, it's absolutely terrifying.
I agree.
And I think part of it can be explained as simply as the fact that around 51 to 52% of the electorate is female. That they're just playing a numbers game, and they know by appealing to women in the most gratuitous ways possible that they get more votes.
Yep.
And certainly appealing to women does not offend men, much to the contrary. The narrative of men exercising their power at women's expense. Men embrace policies that protect and provide for women. They always have. And so he's playing both sides of the fence. It's a no-lose game. And hopefully, finally, some conservative politicians are starting to get onto this game. VAWA has had struggles for reapproval in the past few years because of the funding in it and a lot of other
the hate in it.
Yeah, the hate in it. And hopefully one day that'll go the way of the dinosaur, the way all bad ideas eventually need to go.
How about today?
Yeah, sure hope so. The billions of dollars that has been poured into VAWA and how it has therefore propped up all sorts of feminist lobby groups that spread lies, false statistics, hate groups essentially, that have increased the conviction in our society that men are abusers, that even a man's touch. I strongly defended Joe Biden last year because all these things started percolating last year. In about March, I think, was when 7 women had come forward. We talked about him regarding men. 7 women had come forward saying he had made them uncomfortable. Remember, but the hair sniffing and a long kiss on the back of the head. I forget that woman's name. That talked about that as if it was the worst thing. She felt him breathe in her hair.
That would be pretty gross.
He kissed her on the back of the head. Will she ever get over it? That sort of thing. And there were, a bunch of people made quite funny and engaging video compilations of his touching of children, which has been very strange for sure over the last 20 years. And I looked at all of them, and I have to say that I did not see a predator in those. I saw a strange man who got touchy-feely with everybody of every age. I didn't see a pedophile. I saw him groping older men, you know, as well. I saw him, there was one picture where it was supposed to prove that he was groping a young girl of about 10, groping her breast. I didn't see that. I saw, yes, his hand was very near or on her little chest, but his other hand was around somebody else's shoulders. He was staring at the camera. I mean, to me, it didn't look like a grope. I could be wrong, of course, but you know, I defended him and said that I just did not see a sexual predator in his behavior, sniffing women's hair. I just don't see it as such a terrible thing to do. Now, you know, this is a different kind of allegation, obviously a much more serious sort of thing. But always I have felt that you know, that the things he has done in his capacity as senator and as vice president are far, far more serious than smelling a woman's hair or kissing her on the back of the head. And
I agree with you.
It's astounding that he can get away. That he can get away with that. I mean, yeah, the list goes on and on. This is a very scary man, a very corrupt politician.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, but I mean, our issue is MeToo, and if anything exposes the ridiculous, risible double standards of those activists, this is it.
Yep.
I don't know if it'll actually hobble it. I agree
with you, Janice, I don't see a predator in that sense in Biden's behavior. I see somebody that has no personal boundaries, and it makes sense given what I know of his family background. He was taught you can't have boundaries in that family. They're not allowed, particularly for male children. So it would make sense to me that he would develop into an adult that didn't have a clear-cut sense of other human beings' boundaries, which he's clearly displayed with the groping and touching and just not recognizing personal space. But you're right. His policy pushes have been far more egregious, I think, than his refusal to acknowledge people's personal space. And while I'm still a big fan of due process, I do hope that he is destroyed by the monster he created. There's nothing more poetic than the idea of Joe Biden going down to MeToo, and let that be the close of it. This stuff has been absolutely outrageous. If you look at the MeToo movement itself, what a raw power grab and absolutely corrupt, absolutely indifferent to due process or to evidence. Believe the woman, believe the woman, believe the woman until she accuses a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And then she's a lying whore.
Yeah. Wow.
It's true.
So there we go. But I suspect that what will actually happen is that he will continue on, and MeToo will continue on, because that seems to be the way it happens.
That does seem to be the way. It blows over.
Go ahead, Tom.
It blows over, and then just the same crap happens. Different day, different crap. You know?
Yeah. I do think that MeToo takes a hit on this one, though.
I hope so.
In terms of credibility, I really do.
I hope so.
Even Mika Brzezinski was asking Joe Biden real questions, which actually surprised me. I expected a softball interview where there were no real questions asked, and she actually pressed pretty hard and pressed him to release the records from the University of Delaware, and queried him pretty intensively on this allegation. I'm hoping that this continues, because my fear of that is the left can now say, look, we had Mika Brzezinski really give him, the once over or the third degree in an interview, case closed. We'll see if that continues, or whether or not they can continue with trying to get at the bottom of this from the left. I'm not hopeful either way.
No.
Gosh, is this another happy ending?
It's pretty happy. I mean, it could be the end of MeToo. I mean, that's pretty happy. And Biden getting his own is pretty happy.
Well, I tell you what, though, it is sad in one way. In 2020 America, even a senile old pervert has a chance to be president. And that is downright scary. But I don't know how people on the left or Democrats really, how they rationalize. So, yeah, Joe Biden, he should be in charge of the free world.
Yeah.
Despite not being able to make a noun hit a verb.
Yeah, he won't be the nominee. It's very doubtful.
Yeah, I will, and that's another possibility, Tom, that this is the Democrats' opportunity to get rid of Biden. They can crucify him on the altar of MeToo, say, looky there, we're consistent. We treat everybody the same. Now let's bring in Mario Cuomo and see if we can make him, who says he's not interested in being president of the United States. Of course he's not.
Right.
Yeah, well,
We'll see.
Interesting developments to watch. That's for sure.
Keep us watching, so we'll see what
But
happens.
we will be following it on Regarding Men.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Because
men are good.
Yes, they are.
That was a good one. As are you.
Oh, let me take a moment before we close. I want to thank everybody on BitChute. As many of you know, I have moved off of YouTube. I am using YouTube as a promotional device for these videos and other work that I'm doing. But I had quite a few subscribers come over to BitChute. I'm very, very appreciative of that. This is going to be a great experiment in the next couple of years. I'm going to see if I can build a platform without doing it on YouTube. Why? Because that needs to be a possibility for content creators. It really does, with YouTube censorship and
if you go see Paul on BitChute, you're going to get to see Paul unleashed, Elam unleashed, because he can say what he wants now. Isn't that right, Paul? I mean, weren't you kind of feeling
that's trouble?
Yeah, it is. And that's what people want, though. You know.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and you're great trouble, man. You're great trouble.
Yes, I intend on being as much trouble as possible.
Yes, and that's what people love about you.
In the process, we'll also find out if BitChute is serious about free speech.
Yes. So go see Paul on BitChute.
And you can also get these on Studio Brule and the Men Are Good channel on YouTube. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
All right. Take care, guys.
Next time. Take
Bye-bye.
care.